the early days fighting with the Human Torch to the more recent MCU father figure relationship with Tony Stark, no matter who Spider-Man works with, it's going to change the game. Here's surprising Spider-Man team-ups that changed everything. The introduction of the Black Spider suit, aka Venom, was earth-shattering. Literally, it happened in the comics on Battle World when the heroes and villains were all actively brawling, but even metaphorically speaking, Peter wearing the black suit was a cultural reset. It introduced Venom to the Marvel canon, and that character has now become wildly successful all on their own and bonded to so many other Marvel heroes. The introduction of Venom created this whole new world that is ever evolving and introducing new characters every single year. It also spawned the Venom movies that did so well the company that released them, Sony, decided to start their own Spider cinematic universe. So when you're sat in the theater watching Kraven the Hunter and wondering how he got here, you can blame Venom. Venom, as a sim, takes on the appearance of his host, like if he takes over a horse, he looks like a horse. But as my roommate kept pointing out while we were watching Venom 2018, and also anyone looking at photos of the OG Venom look from 1984's Secret Wars, his human look looks a lot like Spider-Man. And that's just cause he was introduced on Spider-Man. He imprinted on him. The look of Peter's OG spider suit inspired Venom, though Peter thought it was his subconscious thinking it was Spider-Woman 2's suit. Many of Venom's powers are also really close to Spider-Man's, again because that's where he got them. Venom learned to stick to walls and shoot webs while bonded with Peter, and just kept those traits when they separated because why would you give them up? Also, finally, the effect that Bully Maguire from Spider-Man 3 had, cultural reset in itself. In 9th place is Spider-Man and Deadpool. Spider-Man, when you put him next to all the other heroes, he's like the class clown. He's making the little quips and he's having fun. Put him next to Deadpool though, and suddenly Spider-Man is all business. Spider-Man and Deadpool, they quickly became a fan favorite friendship after they first fought in Cable and Deadpool 24. So popular that they had their own comic run from 2016 to 2019 with 51 issues. People liked their dynamic and the fact that Deadpool is trying his hardest to get under Spidey's skin and suit. It also helps that they visually look kind of similar with the red suits. They already look like a little team. Number 8 is that time Spider-Man briefly joined the X-Men and even taught at the school. After the demise of Wolverine, Spider-Man began teaching at the school even though he is not a mutant. The reason why was Wolverine needed Spider-Man to find a mole, and it would just be easier for him to find since he was an unbiased third party. Despite his underlying mission, Peter did his best and truly believed in his students. He helped them come into their own and develop their powers. But what I find so funny though about the whole like X-Men and Spider-Man thing is the argument is always, why are people so chill with heroes like Spider-Man but they hate mutants? And J. Jonah Jameson is like, actually, I'm gonna flip the script here. I love mutants and I absolutely despise Spider-Man. In his early days, Spider-Man was also asked to join the X-Men, but he wasn't looking for a team at the moment. In 7th place, we have the relationship between Peter Parker and Tony Stark in the MCU. This changed a lot about Peter Parker's character because he wasn't really poor anymore. This is actually a major complaint a lot of people have when it comes to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He is supposed to struggle a bit. That was a big part of his character early on in the comics. It's also why a lot of people connected to him. This guy who gets knocked down by not just the villain of the day, but also his personal life, but keeps getting up, it's inspiring. He worked with what he had and he became the best hero he could be despite not having unlimited resources. That's obviously very different in the MCU, pre No Way Home. Peter makes his first suit, but the others are all provided by Tony. Tony also acts as a mentor figure at times. Peter does still learn a lot of lessons on his own, but Tony did show him the ropes when it came to things like being in space. Or there's the iconic, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. The representation of their relationship in the MCU is pretty different from the comics. I'm sorry to tell anyone who is exclusively a movie fan, but they don't always get along. I think Tony literally threw Peter across New York once. Tony's father figureness towards Peter also directly resulted in this next team up that eventually ruined Peter's life.
At number 6, we have the Hulk. In Thor Ragnarok, Thor and the Hulk come together as a team in an unusual occurrence when they face off against Loki, and they make a surprisingly fitting duo, both having been banished from their homeworlds and forced to face off in this strange gladiatorial arena. At this point in the story, Thor is banished from Asgard and without his hammer, and Hulk finds himself lost on a distant planet, banished from Earth. At this point, he's being used as nothing more than a subject for this planet's violent arena matches, and he even gets pitted against against Thor before they eventually decide to team up. So when they do decide to defy their captors and fly back to where they came from, there's more than their combined strength that drives them forward. A bond based on their own experiences with abandonment and desperation leads them to an epic win over Loki by the end of the movie. At number 5 is Thor's epic team up with Rocket and Groot. This alliance makes for a really powerful combo because when they come together, they actually manage to fend off Thanos, one of the greatest threats in all of the cosmos. When Wakanda is invaded by Thanos, T'Challa is forced to turn to external aid to keep his world from being taken over by Thanos. And the unlikely pairing of Thor, Rocket, and Groot come in to fend off the Horde. You may call it luck that allows the outcome from this battle to end well for the good guys, but I'd say it's something about this union of heroes that makes their effectiveness work so well. Maybe it was something about the fact that Thor had just been beaten down till near death by Thanos before he met up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, or maybe their powers just happened to synergize perfectly with one another. Either way, we are left with what has become one of the most epic lines in all of Infinity War. Bring me Thanos. I'm not gonna do it justice, you just gotta look it up. At number 4 is Beta Ray Bill. Thor and Beta Ray Bill have come together on numerous occasions, them being very close friends and allies on and off the battlefield. And whenever they do pair up as a team, their bond really gives them that edge that makes them thrive. Now, is it their bond or is it the fact that they're both wielding Asgardian hammers made from Uru? It might be both. Let's just say it's both. Team-ups between these two usually involve some kind of high-stakes predicament that Asgard finds itself in. For instance, one of the more recent team-ups they've had was the second coming of Ragnarok and the defeat of the Fenris Wolf. Thor eventually sends Bill away to continue his work alone, but there's no doubt that soon enough they come back together to kick some ass for the glory of Asgard. Also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there are theories suggesting that Beta Ray Bill might make an appearance in the new Thor Love and Thunder movie coming out in July. If you know about that one frame going around online with what looks like a missing character, then you may know what I mean. But that's still speculation, so we'll see. Alright, at number 3 is Galactus. This is a really unexpected team up that happens in Thor number 168 and 169 when Galactus actually finds himself in danger at the hands of the Black Winter. So in response to this, Galactus decides to grant Thor a boost of power to become his herald. With this newfound ally, Galactus is able to use Thor's help to take down the Black Winter, as harrowing of a task as it is. This is such a crazy team up, which is why I put it higher on the list. A being as great as Galactus doesn't often find himself in danger, nor does he find himself needing an ally to fight off a formidable threat. But in this instance it happens, and it becomes one of the most unique and powerful Thor team-ups we've ever seen. Thor doesn't really stay loyal to Galactus though, which is a good move because we all know that Galactus wasn't about to turn good after the job was finished. So Thor ends up stealing the entire power cosmic, supercharging himself into one of the most powerful versions of him that we've ever seen. He then uses this power to take down both Galactus and the Black Winter, one of his most impressive feats to date. At number 2 is Jane Foster. I mean, do I have to explain why this one gets put at number 2? This team up gains a huge boost in points due to the iconic and romantic factor. These two have had an on-again, off-again relationship that has brought Jane into positions of power on Asgard and then back into average life on Earth. But in one epic return to form in Avengers number 56, Jane begins to recognize that her humble marriage to Thor might not be as it seems. And when she's proven right, Mephisto is revealed to have been behind an elaborate ruse the whole time. This triggers a Thor from somewhere in the multiverse to come and support Jane Foster in her battle against Mephisto, who appears in the form of 3 pigs. And yes, I know that Jane is known as Valkyrie during this fight, and basically ever since her first run as Thor, but these mantles get thrown around so much that I wanted to explore the only constant, which in this case is Jane Foster. And this isn't the last time these two have or will team up. Whoever's seen the new Thor Love and Thunder trailer knows that she is also going to be making quite the appearance in the new movie coming out in July. Romantic team-ups should always rank high on these lists. Power levels aren't the only thing to consider when two heroes come together. At number 1 is of course Thor's epic and somewhat rare team-up with his brother Loki. Actually, maybe this does happen a few times, but it's mainly because of Thor's tolerance and love for his brother more than anything. Loki still typically makes decisions only if they serve him, but I digress. One of these team-ups happens in one of the earlier comics when Loki decides he'd prefer to have his father Odin rule over Asgard instead of Searcher, so he teams up with Thor to repel the demon's advances. And another time is of course in Thor: The Dark World, when Loki and Thor come together once more with the common motive to take revenge on their mother's killer. And then once again, so yeah, it happens a lot, once again they face off against Hela in Ragnarok. But the most notable team up, if we can call it that, is when Loki sacrifices himself to protect Thor from the Mad Titan. As we all know, these team ups all get so much more respect based on the typical relationship between these two siblings, which is rocky to say the least. So when they do come together, it's often very dramatic and even a bit emotional. And that's what epic team ups are all about, right? The context behind why and how a pair of superpowered beings decide to support each other in battle. At number 10, we have Valkyrie. This is one of the more understandable team ups on the list, considering both Thor and Valkyrie are known to be loyal to the same cause. Speaking of course about the prosperity of Asgard and the protection of the 9 realms. In one particular instance, during the Ragnarok event, Valkyrie and Thor team up in an effort to save Asgard from total destruction at the hands of Hela, and they even take on Thanos at one point. Although they are ultimately unsuccessful and Asgard is destroyed, this is no doubt an epic union between these two heroes. And we can expect them to come together again down the line, knowing that they have a deep respect for each other and very similar stakes on the table. At number 9, we have Hercules. Thor and Herc come together a few different times, both as allies and as enemies, but of course we'll be focusing on their team-ups for this list. At one point, Hercules finds himself under the control of the Greek god Pluto, having been tricked into ruling the Netherworld after signing a film contract. Undoubtedly a bizarre situation to find himself in, but nonetheless, he gets help from Thor, who had previously been more of an adversary to Herc. In fact, before the actual team up that this entry is about, Hercules and Thor fight a few more times, accidentally, which is really weird because it starts to paint Hercules as this very confused and possibly, I don't know, insecure character who doesn't seem to know what he really wants. Finally, they do end up teaming together and they team up to take down the Wrecking Crew. Later, Herc becomes an ally to the Avengers, which makes for a few more team-ups with the God of Thunder, most notably during the Operation Galactic Storm storyline. At number 8, we have Thor's team-up with Iron Man. Although this pair tend to be known to butt heads from time to time, there have been a number of cases of them fighting alongside one another. Of course they have, they're both part of the same very famous superhero team, the Avengers, but I'm not referring to their time on the Avengers, I'm looking at the times when the two heroes go off on their own. One of these times is during the God Complex storyline as part of their 2010 miniseries of comics called Iron Man / Thor, fittingly. And the threat they're up against isn't a joke either. They're trying to stop the High Evolutionary from creating a modern god from nothing, using Iron Man as the vessel. So it's good that Tony Stark has Thor on his side for this one, because dealing with gods and mysticism isn't always the easiest to do on your own if you're immortal, no matter how much money and tech you have. At number 7 is none other than Captain America. Aside from the obvious reason to team up, Thor and Captain America have a pretty healthy relationship going, just the two of them. Possibly the most notable instance of the two teaming up is during the Avengers Prime miniseries when they go to Hell and fight Hela, Thor's sister. Although Iron Man is there as well, Thor and Tony Stark aren't really getting along during this issue, and it more so outlines the relationship between Thor and Cap, both on and off the battlefield. And this is a pretty notable team up as well, given the stakes and the villain they're facing. Hela is one of the most powerful threats out there, and Hell is her domain naturally, so having Captain America there is really important, because if Thor was just accompanied by Iron Man, given their frustrations, it may not have been a successful mission for either of them. They do end up succeeding, and yes, Thor and Iron Man do come back together as friends. But it takes a pretty harrowing battle in the underworld to make that happen, and Captain America's leadership is essential to their success. At number 6, there's Batman and Scooby-Doo. Another strangely fitting pairing. This comic made me realize just how many detective characters there actually are out there, and why they keep insisting on teaming up with one another. In this team up, the villain is Man-Bat, which is actually a great choice because he's one of the few Batman villains that's actually a monster, which fits with the Scooby-Doo brand. But this weird match actually isn't the last time people see the Scooby-Doo franchise work its way into the comic book world. Later on, Scooby-Doo will eventually become a sidekick to Ace the Bat Hound and continue to solve crimes alongside him. Although I'll be honest, I haven't checked out how those issues looked. Couldn't imagine them being able to fit in anything too dark with Scooby-Doo around, you know? They should never have to know the violence that takes place on the streets of Gotham. At number 5 is a weird one for sure. The Avengers actually team up with the Guardians of the Galaxy to face off against Titans from the Attack on Titan universe. This issue is called Attack on Avengers, naturally, and it's a super short 8 pages long. Basically, the plot is that the Titans just show up in New York City and start causing problems. Problems like eating people, you know? What I find strange about this, aside from the obvious, is that the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy pair up in the first place. I feel like it's already a complicated enough concept to have the Avengers versus Attack on Titan, but then they just go and complicate it even further, which is just strange. It doesn't get in the way of it, it's just weird. It's known to be a pretty fun read though. It doesn't go deep into any complex plot or anything, it just sort of has the heroes show off their abilities one after the other to take down the Titans. It's unclear who wins the battle though, with the issue just kinda ending with the Guardians of the Galaxy tapping in to do some Titan killing of their own. At number 4 we have a personal favorite of mine, the Punisher teaming up with Eminem. When I found out this team up took place, I was so happy. It's just such a good fit given their darker personalities and makes me like Eminem more that he'd even go for something like this. This comic came out back in 2009, the same year that Eminem released his Relapse album, just for context for all you Eminem fans out there. The plot is pretty simple, with Barracuda being the villain in the comic that the two team up to take down. The strange part of this issue, other than the part where Eminem and the Punisher are teaming up, is a decision which I think was a bit of a misstep, and it's that Eminem is totally OP. He beats up the Punisher before they even team up for one, which I guess gives Eminem a pretty impressive power stat canonically, and then when they're kidnapped by Barracuda and taken to the Arctic to be killed, Eminem breaks free and saves the Punisher, killing Barracuda with a chainsaw in the process, which sort of weakens the integrity of the Punisher just to boost Eminem. I feel like they could have easily played with Eminem's funny personality a little more and had the two characters play off each other to give us a more humble and dynamic story. But maybe Eminem just said yes to this gig so he could look cool, and somehow even more badass than the Punisher. At number 3 we have Superman teaming up with Bugs Bunny. You heard me correctly. This team up could also just as easily be considered a DC Comics and Looney Tunes crossover, but out of all the different characters from both franchises, Bugs and Superman are two of the more significant characters who end up associating with one another, which is just a bonkers duo to have teamed up in the first place. The way that these worlds collide is that Mxyzptlk and Yo-Yo the Dodo basically just manipulate reality to make the pair up happen for fun, which I guess is the only real way to justify something as weird as this. They don't really do much as a pair, but you can imagine that Bugs just kind of wanders around and quips while Superman tries to figure out how to get him to focus. There's more to it than that, I'm sure, but honestly you'd have to pay me to actually read all the way through this thing. No offense if this is a favorite of yours, I don't know. I saw the cover and I couldn't do it. At number 2 is kind of a part 2 to number 3, if that sentence made any sense. It's Batman and Elmer Fudd. This is just the most bizarre team up, again, with the very loose through line that they're both sort of detectives. Elmer is a hunter, but he's usually like creeping around looking for Bugs Bunny clues and stuff. Either way, this issue is actually known to be strangely good and suspenseful, considering what it is. It has Elmer Fudd partaking in a dark noir storyline on the hunt for a mysterious killer known as the Bunny. But things keep getting more complicated for Fudd when Batman turns out to be the real culprit. Believe it or not, this is a different storyline from the previous entry, which just makes me wonder how the hell Looney Tunes and DC Comics kept thinking it would be a smart idea to give their characters crossovers. Although, it seemingly worked for people. People seem to like this one with Elmer Fudd, so maybe they were onto something. At number 1 is a very, very strange one. Batman and the Beatles, or the copyright-free version of the Beatles anyway. This one doesn't seem to have any common thread to tie these two pop culture worlds together. I really tried to think of one, but I just couldn't. Maybe the writer was just a big Beatles fan and wanted an excuse to get in touch with Paul McCartney's people if he needed to. Maybe they were safe from copyright, because they don't really look like them. I mean, to be fair, the plot of the comic is about as clever as it could have been given the pairing. Batman is basically trying to investigate whether or not Paul of the Beatles is actually dead. For those of you who don't know, there was a fan-generated rumor years ago floating around about the idea that Paul had actually died and was secretly replaced by a guy named William Campbell. So this ridiculous theory is what Batman is trying to get to the bottom of. And what ends up happening, spoiler alert, is that Batman actually discovers it was the other members of the band who were the fake, and that Paul was the only original member of the band remaining, which is It's riveting stuff. And super bizarre. Perfectly bizarre. At number 10, we have Batman and Sherlock Holmes. This is the one that probably makes the most sense on this list, believe it or not, because the original Batman has always been a detective above everything, with his original comics actually being called Detective Comics. This adventure is actually number 572 of that comic series, and the pairing somehow just seems weirdly right. The only thing is that the Sherlock Holmes stories typically take place in the 1800s, well before Batman's time. So the way they make this work is by just simply having Sherlock be super duper old, over 100 years old actually. It works well enough, I guess. The plot is basically that Batman is facing a challenge trying to take down Moriarty and takes Sherlock's help to solve the issue. This is back in the day when Batman was still pretty peppy and fun, bringing Robin along for the ride and everything, so the pair-up kind of works in tone as well. It's a fun little moment in time that brings one of the most influential detectives of one era and pairs him up with one of the most influential detectives of this era. All this considered though, it's still weird, and I needed to put it on the list. At number 9, we have X-Men vs Star Trek. This is a very weird pairing because Marvel could have easily paired up Star Trek with another team that's more synonymous with space travel, like, you know, the Guardians of the Galaxy. But on the other hand, the X-Men do always show an interest in teaming up with and supporting humans, and they sometimes do go into space, so it sort of works. Relatively speaking, that is, in comparison to what else you'll see on this list later. But all in all, this team up is pretty fun, showing off some fun traits of both teams, like Spock using the Vulcan pinch on Wolverine before they become friendly with one another. But the fun and games subside when the teams are tasked with taking on the threat of the mutant Proteus. This team up actually worked well enough when it was released that they even got a few sequels, so there's that. At number 8, we have Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes, this team up actually happened. When Shredder comes to Gotham and teams up with Ra's al Ghul, and they try and, you know, take over the world together, Batman naturally enters the picture. But so do the 4 Ninja Turtles. The contrast between this darker, more modern Batman and the very fun, but very annoying Ninja Turtles makes for a funny combination that is known to actually be pretty good, all things considered. And something about this team up actually does feel right for some reason. Maybe it's the setting of Gotham seeming like it fits for the Turtles, and maybe also something about the dynamic of these characters. Batman does seem like the perfect straight man to the silliness of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Regardless, it is weird, but fun, but weird, but fun, and needed a spot on the list. At number 7 is Superman and the Nesquik Bunny. So as we go deeper into the list, things are getting a little weirder, yes. This one strikes me as bizarre for sure, but also somewhat fitting considering cereal companies love to pair characters from pop culture with their brands. But still, that's the only slack I'm gonna cut it. It's sort of weird that there is an actual comic book about it because it sort of messes with the canon of Superman. But alas, it happened, and it was bananas. Basically just a really long ad for cereal and a pretty weak plot. The villain in this one is Weather Wizard, and somehow Superman has genuine trouble taking him down. So who does he call? A group of young children and a rabbit. And even after their victory, there's a chocolate milk chugging challenge that Superman somehow even loses to the bunny. It's just a bizarre journey of sellouts and awkward writing, but I live for things like this that shouldn't exist but do. It just makes things more fun.
Number 6, the X-Men meet the crew of the Enterprise. Captain's log. Stardate 4740.5. The crew of the Enterprise came across an odd alien ship. They scanned it for life and saw that it was carrying 7 life forms that sensors indicated were near human. Before more information could be gathered, the ship exploded, and a giant creature calling himself the Gladiator appeared and punched the Enterprise. As the engineer, Mr. Scott, attempted to repair the damage to the shields, a group of stowaways who had beamed off the destroyed ship at the last moment came aboard. They called themselves the X-Men. So the X-Men had set off to save the galaxy and were now hiding on the Enterprise, very confused as to how they had ended up in the future. Gambit was injured and Beast took him to the ship's sickbay to find treatment. It was here that Dr. McCoy met Dr. McCoy. The remaining X-Men were discovered by Mr. Spock, who incapacitated Wolverine with the Vulcan nerve pinch and took the team to meet Captain Kirk so they could work together to defeat the villains. This is a fun story filled with some cool moments like the aforementioned Spock and Wolverine fight, as well as some fun character moments like Kirk trying to hit on Jean Grey. But the X-Men and Enterprise crew are an odd pair to pitch together, and the entire affair does feel pretty weird. Number 5, the Punisher meets meets Slim Shady. Getting into the really weird team-ups, we have the time that Frank Castle met Marshall Mathers. In this story, Eminem is leaving a concert with his security when they come across a strange man in a skull shirt in the alley. They pull their guns on him and get absolutely blown away while M makes a break for it. He's rescued by his childhood friend, the Barracuda, who helps him hide from Castle. When Punisher gets too close, Slim Shady beats him up and shoots him. Barracuda then takes out Eminem, and when he wakes up, he's on a boat tied back to back with the Punisher. Punisher explains that he was trying to protect Eminem and only took out his bodyguards because they pulled guns on him and probably all had rap sheets anyways. Barracuda explains that the Parents Music Council has hired him to kill Shady because they think his music is corrupting the youth. He throws M off the side of the boat, but the water is frozen and he manages to get away. He finds an ice fisherman, takes his chainsaw, and returns to the boat to save the Punisher. After freeing Frank, Punisher leaves Eminem stranded on the ice with a phone to call for help as he sets off to take out the Parents Music Council. After all, hiring a contract killer is a serious crime. What? This book is insane! Not just for the premise, but the fact that the Punisher doesn't do anything except get beaten up and later rescued by Eminem. But it isn't the weirdest Punisher crossover. More on that later. Number 4, Spider-Man and the cast of SNL. Live from New York, it's Spider Day Night Live! Starring Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, Jane Curtin, Garrett Morris, Bill Murray, Lorraine Newman, and Gilda Radner. In Marvel Team-Up number 74, Spider-Man got to team up with the classic Saturday Night Live cast in one of the weirdest team-ups in the Wall Crawlers history. Peter and MJ are attending a filming of Saturday Night Live, but little do they know that the show is about to be interrupted by the Silver Samurai, whose magic ring has been sent to John Belushi by accident due to his SNL Samurai character being mistaken for the Silver Samurai. Thugs try to take over the show, but the cast keeps the show going while taking out the thugs with the help of Spider-Man, while the two samurai face off backstage. It is extra weird because the celebrity host is Stan Lee, and the SNL cast are dressing up as Marvel characters. But in a world where Marvel heroes are real, what exactly is Stan Lee famous for? Number 3, Jimmy Olsen and Don Rickles. In Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 141, written by Jack Kirby of all people, Jimmy teams up with the Golden Guardian and Goody Rickles, the superhero who just happens to look like the insult comic and Mr. Potato Head actor Don Rickles. They are poisoned by Intergang and have to find a cure before they explode. They end up at an office where the real Don Rickles is hanging out and just starts slowly going nuts as superhero hijinks take place around him. Eventually the heroes are cured, but Rickles is taken away by the police after claiming that he is going to explode in an effort to get away from Jimmy and his gang. It is a difficult story to follow and wouldn't make this list if it weren't for the weird detail of Don Rickles having a superhero who is not related to him, but is named Goody Rickles and just happens to look exactly like him. That's just all kinds of strange. Number 2, The Punisher meets Archie. In a crossover that started out as a joke between the publishers of the two characters, a criminal who looks remarkably like Archie is being chased by the Punisher. He escapes to Riverdale and the Punisher pursues him there. Archie is up to his usual hijinks, trying to date both Betty and Veronica, when a bunch of feds, mistaking him for his criminal doppelganger, take him away. They are attacked by the Punisher, who realizes his mistake and goes after the double, who has taken Veronica to the town's sock hop. Punisher goes to the dance and is mistaken for a chaperone by the teachers. Things go off the rails when the villain takes Veronica hostage and a shootout breaks out at the dance. The bad guy gets away with Ronnie and Archie has to team up with Frank to take him out. Archie starts keeping a war journal and Frank gets a nice Riverdale sweater as a gift, and together they save Veronica and stop the villain, who they tie to a giant balloon and let fly away, presumably so he will fly into the air and lose oxygen and die. As if all of this wasn't weird enough, the story ends with Professor X informing Wolverine that he has to go after the most dangerous mutant alive, Jughead. Number 1, Green Lantern and Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders has shown up in DC Comics stories a few times, having traveled the multiverse and hired hired Captain Cold and Mirror Master to work in his restaurants. But his weirdest story is when he teamed up with Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern. In this story, the Colonel is working with Ferris Air to test that his new packaging for his Zinger chicken sandwich will protect it for interstellar travel, as he wants to bring his food across the universe. He enlists the help of Green Lantern to help him deliver the food, and Hal agrees. As Hal tells him, every member of the Green Lantern Corps is working on this project. Meaning somewhere a planet is being attacked by Darkseid and the Lanterns are delivering chicken sandwiches. The sandwiches are all stolen by the Orange Lantern Larfleeze, and Hal creates a KFC themed Green Lantern ring for the Colonel so they can go after the sandwiches. Sanders attacks Larfleeze with a drumstick construct, and Larfleeze admits that the Zinger chicken sandwich is the only thing that has ever satisfied his unending longing and hunger. Sanders uses his ring to create the first KFC on the planet Okara and lets Larfleeze sign on as a franchisee, assuming that the Orange Lantern can complete the training program to get his cooking to the Colonel's strict standards. This book is so weird. It's like those old Twinkie ads where Flash would defeat Weather Wizard with the delicious taste of Hostess Twinkie cakes, but instead of being 1 page long, it's the entire comic. So weird. Number 10. Batman and Scooby-Doo. Batman and the gang of meddling kids from Mystery Incorporated actually have quite a long history together, teaming up during the days when Batman cartoons and Scooby-Doo cartoons were both being made by Hanna-Barbera for the odd animated special. Years later, this pairing would make its way into the pages of the comics, with the Dark Knight going on several adventures with the gang. It makes a certain kind of sense. I mean, Batman and the gang are all detectives, so they have a lot of intersecting interests. The comic book series also does a good job of going with a more Silver Age-y take on Batman, so there isn't as much of a clash in tone when Batman pulls Scooby snacks out of his utility belt. But there is still something kind of strange about the idea that Batman would get so stumped on a case that he would call in not another detective hero like, say, Barry Allen, but would go straight to a bunch of teenage jazz cabbage enthusiasts who live in a van with their dog. Number 9. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Ghostbusters. When Donatello of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles created an interspatial teleportation unit, he asked his brothers Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael to help him test the device's capabilities. They go through the portal with their friends April O'Neil and Casey Jones and discover that the device has transported them to a different New York, the one featured in the Ghostbusters universe. They are immediately put face to face with an evil ghost who of course is immune to their attacks and captures and possesses Casey. Thankfully, they are soon saved by everyone's favorite group of paranormal exterminators, Venkman, Winston, Egon, and Ray, the Ghostbusters. The two groups team up and the combination works better than you might expect. There's a certain joy to seeing Venkman start to get on Raph's nerves, while Winston and Leonardo bond over how difficult it is to be the most normal one on a team. Plus, seeing Leonardo swap his bow staff for a proton pack is something I never knew I always wanted to see. Number 8. Superman and Muhammad Ali. This one is perhaps the most iconic of the weird team-ups ever put to panel. One day, Muhammad Ali is in Metropolis playing basketball with some local kids, and Lois, Jimmy, and Clark set out to get an interview with him. Just as they are about to begin their interview, an alien shows up and requests the greatest champion of Earth to fight in an alien boxing match. He has an armada of ships and is going to blow up Earth if they don't accept the challenge. Clark excuses himself and Superman shows up offering to fight. Ali retorts that he will fight the aliens as he is the greatest fighter on Earth. Superman points out that that is a stupid plan because he's, Superman. But Ali reminds him that he's, Muhammad Ali. The alien tells them that they will fight and the winner will face the alien champion. Ali and Superman go to the Fortress of Solitude to train, and Ali teaches Supes some of his moves before they are interrupted by the aliens, who inform them that the fight will take place on their homeworld, which has a red sun, meaning Superman won't have any powers. Ali points out that Superman is in serious trouble. The two have a boxing match, and Ali KOs Superman after a few rounds and goes on to fight the alien champion. It turns out that Superman and Ali fixed the fight, and while Ali fights, Superman is taking out the alien fleet. Ali wins the match and the Earth is saved. Later on Earth, Ali reveals that he has figured out Superman's secret identity, and the two shake hands as Ali declares, "Superman, we are the greatest." It's a weird story and kinda goofy, but it has become such a classic, and the dynamic between Superman and Muhammad Ali is actually so well done that it is worth reading. Number 7. The Avengers meet David Letterman. In Avengers number 239, Wonder Man is having a bit of a problem. He has been trying to make it as an actor, but it hasn't been working out. His agent is aware of his status as a reserve Avenger and books Wonder Man on David Letterman, claiming that he will be accompanied by some of the other Avengers. Wonder Man reaches out to Vision, who arranges for himself, Black Panther, Hawkeye, Beast, and Black Widow to join Wonder Man on the late-night talk show appearance. The villain, Fabian Stanowitz, otherwise known as the Meccano Marauder, sees the promo and decides that he will also be attending. The Avengers go on the show, and Dave interviews the group, getting the bombshell that Beast is leaving the Avengers to start the Defenders, but the interview is interrupted by an attack from Fabian's machines, while Paul Schaefer keeps the band playing to keep the crowd from panicking. Fabian sits down for an interview with Letterman, surrounding them with a force field so they won't be interrupted by the Avengers or the machines. Dave then uses his classic giant doorknob prop to knock out the villain, saving the day. Wonder Man is thrilled that his heroic exploits will be shown on television, but when the show is set to air, it is interrupted by a special news bulletin and no one gets to see it.
Ariel hails from the Coconut Grove, an extraterrestrial planet, and possesses the mutant ability of persuasion. Additionally, her alien physiology grants her teleportation capabilities. Notably, she is connected to another Ariel, her ancestor, who actually visited Earth and served as the inspiration for William Shakespeare's play The Tempest. Yes, that Ariel. The Ariel we're focusing on here, though, not her predecessor, arrived on Earth on a mission to gather mutant samples for study, as her people were intrigued by Earth's mutants' evolutionary processes. During her stay on Earth, she became associated with the fallen angels and would later cross paths with the X-Men in San Francisco, back when they were in San Francisco, joining them temporarily. If or when the fallen angels return, I think it could be cool to have like a deep cut like Ariel make an appearance next time around. I don't know if we'll ever see the fallen angels again. I kinda hope we do. You know? I think I'm ready for another Fallen Angel series actually. I'm ready to try again. Let's try again, shall we? While Candy wasn't necessarily a member, she did help the X-Men and made her first appearance in X-Men issue number 31 in the 60s. Candy Southern was a longtime friend of Angel's and would later end up dating Warren. She would also team up with the X-Men to help find Warren when he went missing after learning of the fellow mutant team's existence and Warren Worthington III's role as hero, Angel. Candy would later break up with Warren and was killed by X-Factor enemy and former friend Cameron Hodge. Cameron Hodge, another villain that I feel like we do not talk about enough, but who is terrible. Candace Southern wasn't a mutant and didn't have any powers, but she was skilled in business. So I can see why her and Angel hit it off actually. I would love to see her somehow be resurrected and return to the comics in, I don't know, in an X-Corp series, let's say. I thought maybe she might return in the previous one, but I don't remember seeing Candy there. That previous X-Corp series was so short-lived. Oh, tragic. Beak's mutation ended up being slightly more unfortunate in comparison to some of the other more well-known core members of the X-Men team. Beak is Barnel Bohusk, and his mutant powers are simply that he looks and shares similar attributes to a bird. His bones are hollow and light, meant to lend well to flying, and he has feathers which should also help him to fly, and yet he's not a very good flyer. In fact, initially, Beak couldn't fly at all when he first appeared. Now he can, but he still has to work really hard to do that, and even then he can only fly for short distances typically. Other than that, Beak simply can see better than most at a long range, and is armed with talons and a beak which he can of course use to fight with. But for the most part, Beak simply looks like a bird and as such is usually more on the sidelines than in the middle of the action. He did for a while have a suit, however, that enhanced his abilities and also granted him additional strength and powers more useful for physical fighting. But for the most part, I feel like Beak's main strong suit is just making friends with everybody. That's kind of what he does. Despite Dupe's eccentric nature, his status as a mutant remains unconfirmed. What is Dupe? Well, his origin is shrouded in mystery, leaving room for speculation that he could be a mutant, or he could be an alien, or he could be a being from another dimension. We don't really know. The lack of explicit verification makes him a peculiar addition, of course, to this list, although he clearly isn't the only non-mutant to join the X-Men team, as I've already talked about. I mean, like Candy's just a human. Though he might just be one of the quirkiest additions, mutant or not. Dupe has engaged in numerous adventures with the X-Men, serving as the receptionist for the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, working for Wolverine. His presence on Krakoa did suggest that despite the unknown origin in terms of what we know factually in the comics, he really is at home among mutants, emphasizing his enigmatic connection to the mutant world, and possibly suggesting that he is a mutant, but like I said, we don't really know. While Fabio Medina today might be more easily recognized, considering that he's been a part of the very important mutant team known as the Five, which were responsible for resurrecting fallen mutants, when he was known by his former codename of Gold Balls, he would have been much less recognizable. Much less. Fabio's powers allow him to produce and shoot, well, gold balls from his body, hence his name, Gold Balls, each one firing off with a poink sound. However, since his time as Gold Balls, it was more recently revealed during the Dawn of X that the balls that he produced were in actuality unfertile eggs. With this revelation, he took up the name Egg and he became one of the Five, one of the most important mutants on the island nation of Krakoa, as with this newly understood power, he could basically create eggs, which could then be made fertile by the other Five and could be used to regrow and resurrect fallen mutants, so pretty important. So if you haven't heard of Egg or Gold Balls, he is a member you'll likely get to know a bit better, I would say, in the modern era. I don't know if he's going to be as relevant in the new era of X-Men comics, but we'll have to wait and see. Amanda Sefton, initially known as Jermaine Zardos, is the adopted sister of Nightcrawler, a mutant and member of the X-Men who adds a layer of unexpected complexity to her relationship with Kurt, as also she is one of his significant love interests. Yeah, that's a thing, you heard me right. The complexity begins when, while adopting the alias Amanda, she ends up investigating Kurt's actions following their brother Steven's death, which was blamed on Kurt. Now, Jermaine assumes the persona of Amanda Sefton during this undercover operation. She's basically trying to figure out what really happened, and she doesn't think that Kurt is fully to blame here. And it's during this period that Kurt ends up developing feelings for her, oblivious, at least initially it seems, to the fact that Amanda is, yes, his adopted sister Jermaine. I don't know how you wouldn't recognize, but I digress. Maybe there's magic involved. Known more commonly as Amanda now in the comics, Jermaine is a formidable sorceress. While not a mutant, she has proven to be a valuable ally to the X-Men, and she was a member of their unofficial Muir Island X-Men team. Mimic is a mutant, but one who gained his abilities after knocking over a beaker accidentally in his father's lab, which caused a chemical reaction that created a strange red gas which he inhaled. His powers allow him to mimic the abilities and skills of other beings within a certain distance of him. Increased exposure to others' abilities seems to also grant him more permanent adaptations of those powers. It wasn't until more recently that it was confirmed that Mimic was in fact a mutant during House of X, as suspected since the 90s. We thought that was a thing, but you know, his origin is kinda weird. Instead, we were led to believe initially that he was a human whose DNA was genetically altered. 'Cause you know, his origins. While not appearing often in the comics, Mimic, aka Calvin Rankin, is a character who has been around since the 1960s and first appeared in X-Men issue number 19, where fans were introduced to him and the question was posed of whether or not Mimic was a mutant or something far worse. Turns out he was a mutant, not something far worse. Mimic is a longtime villain of the X-Men who did for a time play the role of hero and has served on both the heroic X-Men team as well as Norman Osborn's Dark X-Men team during the events of Dark Reign. Despite the fact that Forget-Me-Not is someone you definitely forget, you may have heard us talk about him before on this channel. But for those who have not heard of him or have simply forgotten him, let me give you a little refresher in terms of who he is. Forget-Me-Not is an X-Men member whose mutant power is that no one can ever remember him, which is why, you know, might be a member of the team that we'd be like, wow, that's surprising because I forgot about him. Get it? His powers make it easier for him to infiltrate places, but it also makes it harder for him to ever connect with anyone, make a friend, or even, have his teammates remember that he is actually on that team, because they don't remember who he is. This is why Forget-Me-Not is also usually left off the official rosters for the team, and while you might never really see his name mentioned there ever, sometimes he'll just pop up and you'll be like, oh, I guess he's on the team, but none of us remembered that. Forget-Me-Not's psychic powers that enable him to go unnoticed and remain forgotten were actually so strong that even Professor Xavier struggled to remember him, and as it was revealed in X-Men Legacy issue number 300, he actually had to place within his mind a psychic hourly reminder just so he wouldn't forget permanently about Forget-Me-Not's existence. Yeah. You know you're powerful when Professor X has to set a psychic timer. While not naturally born, this Spider-Girl made a single appearance in Avenging Spider-Man in issue number 16. She had similar powers to Spider-Man, but was made of a combination of spider and mutant DNA by the Jackal, who used materials found in Mr. Sinister's lab. Honestly, the things you could probably make with materials found in Mr. Sinister's lab. As such, she also had the additional powers to shapeshift into a giant spider with 5 human eyes. While in this shape, she also had the power to spit purple mucus and even fire optic blasts from her eyes. Makes you think there might be some Summers DNA mixed somewhere in there. I know, that's what I'm thinking. She ended up rampaging across the city after the Jackal released her as part of a test. Fortunately, she was apprehended by Superior Spider-Man and the X-Men, who explained that she seemed to be a mutant and ended up taking her in after, of course, defeating her. We never really heard anything about her after that though, so who knows where she is. Maybe she was on Krakoa. Spider-Girl was created by Christopher Yost and Paco Medina. Spiral has been an enemy of the X-Men, but would also become a member of Storm and Psylocke's X-Force team. She was a human known as Rita Hayward, who would end up in the Mojoverse and become part of a time paradox, having been attacked by her future mutated self, Spiral. She was a stunt woman who ended up falling in love with Longshot during his time on Earth and returned with him to the Mojoverse. When his plan to defeat Mojo tragically failed, Rita was captured and was modified by Mojo to have 6 arms, one of which was completely cybernetic. Spiral herself is part cyborg, part human mutate as a result of the modifications performed on her. She can also do magic by dancing around. That's a thing she can do. She was the one responsible acting as an agent of Mojo for giving Psylocke her cybernetic eyes as well.
There was this weird time when the X-Men were fighting Mojo in the X-Men Volume 2 issue 10 and ended up in the Mojoverse. The Mojoverse is inhabited by beings that are addicted to TV, so the way to rule the population is to make the best TV, putting in people's favorite actors, remaking films, and Mojo's choice is Wizard of Oz starring the X-Men because the X-Men bring in great ratings, true there and here. Mojo calls it his Wizard of X, and the cast list is as follows: Longshot as Dorothy, Wolverine as the Cowardly Lion, Rogue as the Tin Man, Cyclops as the Scarecrow, and Beast as Toto. The gang follows the yellow brick road all the way to defeating Mojo. It wasn't easy, but they did it. While this choice may have been unexpected, it wasn't totally out of left field. Marvel has actually done The Wizard of Oz before in 1975. That collaboration was equally unexpected because it wasn't just Marvel in The Wizard of Oz, DC was there too. The Wizard of Oz comic was the first time DC and Marvel published something together. Joint publishing wasn't the original plan, it just so happened that both companies were developing a Wizard of Oz comic at the same time, and having 2 Oz comics out there would not have worked out well for either of them. So Stan Lee called DC up and suggested the joint venture. It was accepted and made comic book history. After the success of Christmas specials from other popular studios, Disney wanted something similar. In 2009, they aired Prep and Landing on ABC. The story centers around the elves that get people's houses ready for Santa's arrival. Proper tree trimming, nut-free cookies, things like that. The special did really well. It won awards and everything, so it's no surprise that Marvel wanted in on the Christmas action. In 2011, Prep and Landing Mansion Impossible was released as the backup comic in a few Marvel issues. It followed the same 2 elves from the animated special as they decked the halls of the Avengers mansion. The charm and humor of the comic rests in the fact that the elves have no idea who is in the mansion. I guess the Avengers' worldwide fame has yet to make it to the North Pole. They think the Hulk is a Christmas fanatic because he's green, and the Avengers A stands for awesome. It's a super cute comic to get you into the holiday spirit, so bookmark it for December. Marvel's main universe is sometimes called the Prime Universe, especially fitting when Optimus Prime is involved. That's right, the Avengers and the Transformers have teamed up. Technically, it didn't happen in the Prime universe, I just thought that would be a cute intro. Marvel was producing Transformer comics as early as 1984 in a successful 80-issue run, even though the characters were originally property of Hasbro. They had the characters licensed, but then lost them a few years later, but as luck would have it, in 2007 they were back in business with the new Avengers/Transformers. The basic plot is that tensions are high between Latveria, ruled by Dr. Doom, and neighbor Symkaria. The Avengers and Transformers are trying to prevent a war. They are teammates by the end, but it was a rocky start. When the Avengers first saw the Transformers, attack mode was initiated. I think that's fair. Imagine one day a gaggle of massive robot cars shows up with blasters, I'd panic too. Everybody calms down eventually and works together to save the day. Bringing in the Transformers was a really good move because that meant Iron Man got Transformer-sized armor, and any win for Tony is a win for me. The Looney Tunes and DC universes are almost the same age, both founded in the 1930s. The Looney Tunes is a family-friendly film and TV animated franchise. It's super lighthearted and almost always leans into the slapstick form of comedy. Then on the other side is DC. DC started out a bit goofy and lighter in content, at least when you compare it to what it is today. Nowadays, when you see DC media, it typically has dark themes and screens and is generally pretty serious in nature. But when both franchises are owned by the same parent company, no crossover is off the table. Starting in 2017, an epic comic crossover between DC and Looney Tunes was in full swing. Crossover event was titled DC Meets Looney Tunes and featured 10 pairings, each getting their own issue. The issue would start with a comic done in the DC style, and then the second was drawn in the style of Looney Tunes. It was a fun series with fun character designs, if I do say so myself. There have been DC crossovers on TV too. In a 2003 episode of Duck Dodgers, Daffy Duck accidentally gets his dry cleaning mixed up with the Green Lanterns. Daffy turns into the Green Lantern for a bit, but eventually returns the suit. TMNT, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, have had the pleasure of fighting alongside everyone's favorite Caped Crusader, Batman, multiple times. There was a 6-issue comic series, Batman/Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, released in 2015. Part 2 was released in 2017, Part 3 in 2019. In 2016, a spin-offs miniseries called Batman/Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures was released, and then an animated film in 2019 called Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So they are basically best friends at this point. Part 1 and 2 of the comics and the Adventures miniseries are the TMNT being transported into Batman's universe, whereas Part 3 is set in a different universe that the Turtles and Batman both just live in. The film is kind of a mashup of the comics. In the comics Part 1, the Turtles were desperate to get back to their universe because the thing that created them was considered an anomaly in Batman's world, and if they stayed too long, they would slowly die. That didn't fit in with the plans for the movie too well, so they used the universe from Part 3 as the base, and then some of the plot ideas from Part 1 for the story. The film got really good reviews. People seem to enjoy seeing this pairing, and studios are hopeful for sequels in the future, so I'm sure we'll see them together again soon. In the show Riverdale, I know we don't like to think about it as a society, but unfortunately right now we must. In the show, there is a plot line where all the characters get superpowers. I wish I was kidding, but I am not. It's always been the most random plot choice to me. Imagine my shock and surprise when I find out there may have actually been source material for it. While the Archie and the Punisher crossover has no correlation to the show, it hopefully inspired that plotline. Archie and the Punisher was a shocking collab because those characters have nothing in common. Archie is this wholesome high school kid, and the Punisher is not that. He is very rough around the edges and aggressive. The idea of pairing these two up actually started as a joke. That joke was mentioned to a higher up, and suddenly it wasn't a joke anymore. There aren't any universe transfers. Riverdale just exists in the Punisher's world. So the Punisher is tracking this bad guy named Red, who looks a lot like Archie. Of course, Archie is mistaken for Red, but once the Punisher realizes it's not him, they end up kind of working together to get Red captured. I don't know if the Riverdale CW writers planned or stumbled into this, but in the show, Archie's character does become his own kind of Punisher and starts a vigilante group called the Red Circle. Maybe the Riverdale writers were not just spinning a dartboard for plot points and were actually trying to subtly bring the comics to life. When Debbie Ryan said she sat down with the president of Disney Channel and told him she wanted to make history, she was talking about an on-screen wedding, but she should have been talking about the crossover she had with Spider-Man. The episodes aired at the same time, and no one knows why Disney chose this pairing, but Jessie is set in New York, so that might have been a factor. The episode is titled Halloween Night at the Museum, a nod to another famous, now Disney movie. For those who weren't watching the Disney Channel at the time of Jessie, the show was about an actress who moved to New York to pursue her dream, but she needed a survival job. That job was being a nanny to the 4 kids of famous actors. It was like she was a nanny to Brangelina, basically. This was a live-action show, so what are they doing on Ultimate Spider-Man? The plot is basically, it's Halloween. There is an exhibit in the museum on Camelot. A suit of armor contains the evil Morgan Le Fay. She is released, and then Spider-Man and the Jessie crew have to put her back before she plunges the world into total darkness. The Jessie crew isn't transported to the Ultimate Spider-Man universe, they just exist there, which implies that there is a universe where everybody in the Disney Channel universe and the Marvel universe exist together. Where is the sweet life of Wanda and Pietro? Make Miley Cyrus a Hannah Montana Dazzler. The sky's the limit. One time, my friends went thrifting and told me they got me a present, and it was Phineas and Ferb Mission Marvel on DVD, and I put it on display. It was the first Disney Channel Marvel crossover, and it was surprisingly perfect. The show was the perfect setting to poke fun at Marvel and having it make sense. Phineas and Ferb as characters just fit right in next to the heroes with their superior engineering skills. They reference iconic MCU lines. Stan Lee has a cameo. It's perfect! Okay, so the drama. Dr. Doofenshmirtz created the Power Draininator to suck the mayoral powers from his mayor brother, but it got the Avengers instead. Their powers end up in Phineas and Ferb's space station containment unit, but no one knows that till the end. So the whole thing is about trying to get the heroes' powers back while keeping the tri-state area safe from the villain squad. Candace and Isabella are the ones to go to the space station and get the powers back in the end. The lineup for the final battle is wild. MODOK, Whiplash, Venom, and Red Skull are up against Spider-Man, the Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Perry the Platypus, Phineas and Ferb as Beak, Baljeet Hulk, Buford as Bear Boy, and Dr. Doofenshmirtz shooting waffles. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the battle is basically the endgame battle in a different font. The events of this show take place in the same universe as the ones from Jessie, at least that's what we can assume, as the voice actors for the heroes are the same ones from Ultimate Spider-Man. Can't remember when I saw Scooby-Doo meets Batman for the first time, but I know it shaped me as a person. Technically, it first came out in 1972, but was released on home video in 2004. The DVD had 2 episodes on it, The Dynamic Scooby-Doo Affair and The Caped Crusader Caper. At first glance, what does a gaggle of teenagers and a talking dog have to do with a billionaire superhero and his ward? The longer I think about it though, I get it. Both teams love a good mystery. They are routinely up against weird people in funny little outfits. They both have iconic cars. Plus, when you take in Batman's penchant for adopting odd teenagers, the dots are connecting. The 2 crossover episodes inspired a later addition to the Scooby-Doo Batman universe, the feature-length film Scooby-Doo and Batman, The Brave and the Bold. Both episodes and the movie feature the Joker. The episode's secondary villain is the Penguin, and for the movie, it's a new guy named Red Cloak. This isn't the last time that Batman and Scooby-Doo cross paths. In 2019, Scooby-Doo Guess Who aired. It was a show that was created pretty much for guest stars. Lots of big names were featured, including another run-in with the Caped Crusader. This time, Batman is looking for Alfred, who, get this, is an honorary uncle to Daphne. So now we know that Daphne and Alfred are close family friends. Picture this, you are in New York, you're having a great time by the river, and then massive titans come out of the water and try to make you lunch. That's exactly the day New Yorkers had in Attack on Avengers, the 2014 Avengers and Attack on Titan crossover. The story was first released in Japan and then released in the US the next year. I'm guessing that most of the people watching this video know the Avengers, but for the 0.1% that don't, they are a Marvel superhero team. For those unsure about Attack on Titan, it's a Japanese anime series that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world terrorized by titans. Titans enjoy humans for lunch and are basically giants that are really hard to kill. Luckily, the Avengers have dealt with tough guys before and put up a solid fight when the Titans show up in NYC. Right at the end, we even get a visit from the Colossal Titan, the biggest and baddest of them all, and hopefully he gets taken down when the Guardians of the Galaxy also show up. We don't know exactly how it ends, as the comic's last panel is just Iron Man telling the Avengers the battle isn't over. So it's a cliffhanger with no concrete resolution as of right now, but maybe soon. So our 6th spot is for another MCU team up, one that taught Peter that you can't trust everyone, no matter how nice they might seem. I am talking about that of Mysterio and Spider-Man from Spider-Man Far From Home. This team up altered Peter's brain chemistry. Literally, it unlocked his spider sense. Okay, not really. Peter already had it. But the scene of him fighting all the drones on the bridge was him really trusting himself for the first time. As much as I hate to see Peter hurting, that is a fundamental part of his character, and if he hadn't been betrayed by Mysterio, he wouldn't have learned who his real support system was, and they were a necessity for his next movie. No pain, no gain. Plus, the Mysterio team-up resulted in Peter's identity being revealed to the world, which ultimately led to Peter's life completely flipping on its head and he lost everything. Alright, number 5 goes to Spider-Man and Spider-Man, aka Miles Morales and Peter Parker. If you look at this through the lens of the Spider-Verse movies, Miles meeting Peter changed the course of his life on impact. There's literally a scene where you can see Miles' life trajectory change in a matter of seconds. The moment is when he's sitting in front of his Spider-Man and the colors around his head change from the Prowler green and purple to the Spider-Man blue and red. Then, you know, he was like set on a mission to save the multiverse, in which he met his lifelong friends and then later discovered he actually changed the Spider-Man canon, kind of, by becoming Spider-Man, and he was the first anomaly. So yeah, the game was changed with Miles Morales. Miles and Peter meeting in the comics was one of the things that alerted everyone to the impending incursions, and that also really changed the worlds. In spot 4, I have to put one of the Fantastic Four. I mean, it is in the name, the Human Torch. This was one of Spider-Man's first ever official team-ups. It was the first of the Marvel team-up comic run from the 1970s. This friendly, co-worker, super relationship has stood the test of time and set Peter up with the skills to continue working with other heroes instead of just being a loner. Spider-Man even rejected a few teams at first because he thought it was his destiny to always work alone. Spider-Man actually tried joining the Fantastic Four right at the start of his journey, but it was because he was looking for a job because he realized he can't cash checks as Spider-Man, so he needed to join a super team with a salary. 1 against 4, he did destroy the team and portions of their lab, only to swing from the window upon finding out they don't in fact pay. 3 spiders for spot number 3. Was there anything more surprising than seeing 3 Spider-Man team up in Spider-Man No Way Home? Like, sure, everybody speculated that it was going to happen, but we were also all ready for it to not happen because the idea was so absurd. There was a high chance Marvel would never make this dream come true, but literally thank goodness that they did. I don't know about y'all, but I remember seeing that scene in theaters for the first time. The energy was unmatched and I've been chasing that high ever since. This scene changed the MCU for better. Well, that's up for debate, but it certainly changed it for good. The comics have been doing the multiverse thing for decades, but the MCU hadn't really touched it. There were glimpses of it. I am not here to erase Doctor Strange, that's a great movie, or the new Gamora from Endgame, but the idea of having multiple of the same person from different universes on screen at the same time fighting together, that was not something the MCU had done before. Spider-Man was the right hero for Marvel's first real dive into the multiverse, in my opinion. However, did the MCU get better after it started going all in with the multiverse after seeing the success of No Way Home? Some would argue no. No matter what though, you can't deny that the triple spider swing was a benchmark in the history of the MCU and nothing has been the same since. Our runner-up today, because I really wanted to mention it, is Tom Holland and Zendaya. Holland and Zendaya's team up for the Spider-Man movies changed the trajectory of their lives, not only launching both their careers even further, but also was a first step towards them literally finding their soulmate. Can you tell I'm excited about a Peter and MJ couple breaking the spider curse and getting engaged? I'm so happy for them. Number 1 is going to make some people mad, but Spider-Man's team up with Mephisto. I am in fact referencing the cursed moment when Peter gave up his marriage with MJ to save Aunt May. It literally changed everything. As much as we all hate the call, you can't deny that the world was not the same after those two made a deal. And I don't even mean just the 616 universe's history changing, but since this deal with the devil, things have changed in the way Marvel writers are allowed to tell Peter's story going forward. A Marvel editor went viral in 2024 for saying that if a writer wanted to make MJ and Peter a couple again, that's fine, they just can't get married. And that's the rule now, Peter can't get married.